Welcome to another deep dive. Today, we're going to be going through the case of Samira Watkins, a young mother who is trying to make a better life for herself and her son in Pensacola, Florida.
A truly tragic case that really highlights the darker sides of human nature, and just the lengths that people will go to hide their secrets.
And we're going to be going through all of the evidence together, interview transcripts, forensic reports, and court testimony, a real behind-the-scenes look how this case was put together.
And you'll see how little details that you wouldn't even think about, like a burner phone call or a late-night purchase, can actually become really important pieces of evidence.
So let's just start by painting a picture of Samira's life. She was a 25-year-old single mom, juggling college courses, working nights at McDonald's, all while raising her 4-year-old son. She was dedicated to a better future.
Her family describes her as incredibly driven and responsible, someone who always put her son first, and she was working towards becoming a dental assistant.
Heartbreaking to think about how her life was cut short. So how did Zachary Littleton, a seemingly charming Navy officer, end up in the picture? He was stationed at Pensacola Naval Air Station.
Well, Samira and Littleton met at a time when she was very vulnerable, and he presented himself as this stable, attentive guy, the complete opposite of her ex-boyfriend, almost too good to be true.
Yeah, and that's where the layers of deception begin to unravel. We learned from the source material that Littleton wasn't who he said he was at all. He was leading a double life. His real name was actually Ricky. He was already married, and his wife and kid were about to join him in Pensacola.
I mean, think about the pressure, right? He's trying to keep up this facade. He's juggling a secret relationship, and then, his family is about to show up.
Right. It really makes you think about the psychology behind those elaborate lies. What drives someone to create such a carefully crafted persona?
Yeah, the question that comes up in these cases a lot, right? Is it a need for control? Is it a fear of exposure? The desire to project a certain image? I mean, these could all be contributing factors.
Yeah. So we've got Samira, who's striving for a better life, and Littleton, trapped in this web of his own lies. Now, let's fast forward to the night of October 29th, 2009. This is where the story takes a really dark turn. So what happened that night?
Well, Samira vanished, just like that. Gone without a trace. She'd just gotten home from a long day of classes and work, put her son to bed, told her sisters that she'd be back in a couple hours, and then she never returned.
And this was totally out of character for her, right?
Completely. She was known for being dependable and dedicated. Missing work and school was just not like her at all. So naturally, her family was extremely worried.
Well, when someone disappears like this, investigators have to consider everyone who was in contact with her, so I imagine that suspicion immediately fell on her ex-boyfriend, William Peters.
Of course, yeah. Given their history, he was an obvious initial suspect. They had a really rocky relationship, and Peters actually had a criminal history, a conviction for battery and false imprisonment against Samira.
Sounds like they had a good place to start. But the source material said that he had an alibi for that night.
That's right. He was working with his family's cleaning service, and detectives were able to confirm that.
Mm.
So while he might have had a reason, he just wasn't their guy.
So if Peters is ruled out, the focus shifts back to Littleton, and that's when things get really interesting. What were some of the first red flags that came up about him?
Well, for starters, remember that mysterious phone call that Samira made before she disappeared. The one from the burner phone. Littleton denied knowing anything about it, said he didn't even have a second phone.
But that wasn't exactly true, was it? The source material says that investigators looked closer at Samira's phone records and found that same number had called her dozens of times in the week before she vanished.
Exactly. Dozens of times. And when they traced that burner number back, guess who it belonged to? Zachary Littleton. So that seemingly unimportant little detail actually became a major turning point in the case because it directly connected Littleton to Samira just days before she disappeared.
A classic example of how the smallest things can blow a case wide open. So we have this burner phone connection. Was there anything else that raised suspicion about Littleton?
Well, 4 days after Samira vanished, a duffel bag washed ashore near the Pensacola Naval Air Station. Inside the bag was Samira's body. The cause of death was asphyxiation, and her face was covered in duct tape.
Oh my gosh, that's just horrible. Did they find any other clues at the scene? Anything that might connect it back to Littleton?
There was one strange thing. One of Samira's gold hoop earrings, the kind she always wore, was missing. And remember, Littleton had just moved into a new house. Well, when they searched the place, they found paper towels with a very specific design. And get this, they matched the paper towels that were found inside the duffel bag with Samira's body.
So it's starting to come together, but I'm guessing this is only the beginning. What happened next?
Well, this is where the digital trail starts to get really interesting. But before we get into all that, let's back up a bit and look at Littleton's behavior in the days after Samira disappeared. He claimed that he was home packing all night and that he hadn't seen her, but, his actions tell a very different story.
So Littleton claims he was home packing, but we also have the burner phone connection. It doesn't seem like a coincidence. What else did they find out about what Littleton was doing that night?
Yeah, this is where things get really interesting. The investigators found out that Littleton had made a call from a Waffle House at like 4:30 in the morning. And this Waffle House wasn't far from where Samira's car was later found.
So not only was he not home packing, but he's out in the middle of the night. And this was all caught on camera, right?
Yep, they got the surveillance footage from the Waffle House, and sure enough, there he was, buying Clorox wipes at 4:30 a.m.
Uh,
And those same wipes were found with Samira's body.
wow. That's not good at all for Littleton. It really starts to paint a picture of what might have happened that night. So what about the friend who helped him move? Did he give the investigators any useful info?
Yeah, he did. Remember how Littleton said that he was packing all night? Well, his friend told investigators that when he got to Littleton's apartment the next morning, there were no boxes packed. Nothing.
So Littleton's alibi is totally out the window. They've got him lying about where he was. They have physical evidence connecting him to the scene. And then there's the motive. It seems like things were not looking good for him.
Nope, not at all. 3 weeks after they found Samira's body, they arrested Zachary Littleton for her murder.
I bet that was a relief for her family. But the case wasn't over yet, right? What happened then? Did Littleton confess?
No, he said that he was innocent. But the evidence was really piling up against him. So they searched Littleton's house and took his computer. What they found on that computer was pretty disturbing. Samira's sisters said that Littleton had been pressuring Samira to end her pregnancy.
Yeah, that was definitely an issue in their relationship.
Well, when they went through Littleton's computer, his searches told a different story. Early on, he was searching for abortion clinics and ways to cause a miscarriage.
Oh, wow. So it wasn't just pressure. He was actually trying to figure out how to end the pregnancy. Did his searches change as time went on?
They did, and they took a very dark turn. After those first searches about abortion, he started looking for information online, how bodies decompose and how to get rid of a body. This wasn't just a guy who didn't want to be a father. It seems like he was planning something.
Yeah, this completely changes things. It seems like he was thinking about this, which is really scary.
Exactly. And on top of all that, after that first interview with the police, Littleton started searching for how to pass a polygraph test. Like he was trying to stay ahead of them.
So he was trying to cover his tracks the whole time. It sounds like the prosecution had a strong case against him. But what about his defense team? What was their strategy?
Well, the defense argued that all the evidence was circumstantial. They pointed out that no one actually saw Littleton kill Samira, and there wasn't any DNA evidence connecting him directly to the murder.
So they were basically trying to make the evidence seem less reliable. What about all the stuff they found at his house? Did they have an explanation for that?
Yeah, they said that maybe the paper towels and Clorox wipes were there for other reasons, just normal stuff. And they said the missing earring could have been lost somewhere else and ended up at his house somehow.
But those explanations seem weak, especially with all the other evidence. What about him being at the Waffle House late at night? Did the defense have anything to say about that?
They tried to downplay it, but, the video footage of him there, especially him buying Clorox wipes, was hard to ignore for the prosecution. It proved that he wasn't where he said he was, and it put him near where they found Samira's car.
It sounds like the defense had a tough job ahead of them. What about Samira's family? Were they involved in the trial at all?
Yes, they were. Samira's sister, Sylvia, gave a really emotional testimony. She talked about what a great person Samira was, her dreams for the future, and how much her death hurt their family. It was a powerful reminder that this crime had a real human cost.
Wow, I bet hearing her sister speak had a big impact on the jury. So after they presented all the evidence and made their arguments, what did the jury decide? It sounds like the jury had a tough decision to make after all that. What was the verdict?
Well, the jury only took about 3 hours before they came back with a guilty verdict, first-degree murder.
3 hours? That's pretty quick, especially for a complicated case like this.
Yeah, I think it really shows how strong the prosecution's case was. They did a great job connecting all the dots, the digital evidence, the physical clues, the witness testimonies. It all came together and painted a pretty clear picture.
What was Littleton's sentence?
Life in prison, no chance of parole.
Well, nothing can bring Samira back. But at least he was held accountable for what he did. This deep dive has been really fascinating, but also really sad. As we wrap up, what are some of the big takeaways you think people should remember from this case?
I think it's a powerful reminder that domestic violence can happen anywhere, even with someone who seems charming.
Hmm.
People can hide their true nature.
Right, and it's so important to be aware of the warning signs, like if someone's trying to control you or isolate you, and to get help if you're in danger.
Also, this case shows how important technology is in investigations these days. I mean, Littleton's digital trail, the burner phone, his computer searches, even that Waffle House video, it all played a huge part in getting that guilty verdict.
Yeah, it's like our phones and computers are keeping track of everything we do, a digital record of our choices and our secrets, and that can be used to find the truth.
Exactly. But it also brings up some big questions about privacy.
Hmm.
As technology gets more advanced and our lives are more and more online, how do we balance the need for privacy with the need to solve crimes? It's a tough question.
This case also brings up the issue of crimes against pregnant women, right? The prosecutors couldn't charge Littleton for harming Samira's unborn child because of the laws in Florida at the time.
It's a complex issue, for sure, and it's really emotional. A lot of states are passing laws that recognize unborn children as victims, but those laws are still being worked out.
Yeah, it will be interesting to see how those laws play out in future cases. Samira's story is just so powerful. It shows us so much about human nature, how powerful technology can be, and how we're constantly trying to improve the way we seek justice.
It's one of those stories that you just don't forget. It reminds us to appreciate life, to watch out for danger, and to remember that even the smallest detail can be important.
It really makes you think what sticks with you the most from this case? The detective work, the digital trail, or the impact this had on Samira's family. Her story shows us how important it is to speak up against injustice and try to make the world a safer place.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.